Hey there, everybody, Mr. Larson here. So we're going to be talking about matter. We're going to be talking about different classifications of matter. We're going to be talking about physical properties and chemical properties. We're also going to be looking at how we can understand how they change and how basically physical changes can happen and chemical changes can happen and how we can figure out which one is which. So first things first, we need to understand what matter is. You've investigated this in the last digital lesson, so you should have this definition down. Matter is anything that occupies space and has mass. So, paper towel, penny, bottle of Gatorade. These are all things that have matter. While weight is basically the effect of gravity on matter. So our weight is basically gravity's pulling us down, pulling our matter down. So there are different states of matter. We have gas, liquid, and solid. This is all just review. This is something that might be kind of new to you guys, is this idea of different classifications of matter. So matter can be separated out into two different things. It can be separated out into pure substances or mixtures. So pure substances meaning we only have only one substance. We only have one element. We only have one compound. So this is your sodium hydroxide. This is your sodium elements. These are different things that are pure substances, but there's only one of them. Where we can have different mixtures. So mixtures is two or more. Basically, another example is this Gatorade right here. This is an example of a homogeneous mixture, where we have different elements, different compounds all mixed together, but it all looks the same. There is no difference between the top layer and the middle layer or anything like that. Where heterogeneous is, it has those different layers. So there is a vial of different compounds found that is actually separated out. You can actually see the different layers. That's how you know. Here you have once again, this is just the different classifications. You can see here different examples. So elements, this is copper wire. These are sugar cubes. This is some tea, and then this is probably some. This is maybe a soil sample with different water and kind of those different compounds mixed in there. So physical properties are, matter can also have physical and chemical properties. So physical properties are characteristics that can be evaluated without changing the composition of the material. So the material doesn't change. The metal, the copper doesn't change. So some examples of physical properties are color, odor, taste, feel, density, melting point, boiling point, and compressibility. So each of these represents a different physical property. So basically each element has these different, each material, each thing that has matter has different varying amounts of these physical properties. Now, chemical properties, this actually results in the change of the composition of the material, where physical properties do not change the material, chemical properties change the material. So this happens through chemical reactions. So there are multiple different chemical reactions, which we will get into later in this quarter. So some examples, or one example here, is this idea of combustion, or basically burning things. So a chemical property of wood is its ability to burn, going through this process of combustion. The reason this is a chemical property and goes through chemical change is because you are taking a solid piece of wood from a tree, and when you burn it off, it's creating ash, it's creating different gases, it's creating different smokes just from this piece of wood going through this process. So how you know it's going through a chemical process is that the reactants and the products are different. Reactants and products are different. So the reactants is the before, products is the after. That's how you know. So changes, we have physical and chemical changes. Physical changes can be carried out without substances being changed. So the changing of the composition, and there are multiple different types of physical changes that we see on a day-to-day basis. There's also chemical changes. So any changes that change the composition of the substance. And there are only 5 signs that we know a chemical change has happened. So here is an example of a physical change. So this physical change here, we have this liquid with maybe this heterogeneous liquid with some solid pieces there. And basically what we're doing is we are physically separating out the liquid from the solids. So this is just a physical change where we have a solution with different compounds in it, and then when we separate it out, it goes through some form of physical change. Here is another physical change where we have a salt solution. So there's salt in this water here. We will burn off the solution, burn off the liquid, condense it, and we'll actually end up with salt in this beaker here and the liquid in the other. So this is just another way of physically separating out the materials. We can use magnetism to do this as well. We can use different kinds of chromatography. So each of these are just different types of physical changes we can do to sort of separate out the materials, because that's basically what physical change is you are separating it out into different things. There are different types of intensive properties and extensive, which we will see here. So intensive is basically independent of the amount of substance. So intensive right here. So these are all properties such as color, melting point, boiling point. So the examples used is sulfur. So no matter what property or no matter how the sulfur physically looks, it is always going to have the same color and always going to have the same melting point. Now, extensive, this is your mass and your volume. This is dependent upon the amount of the substance. So you can have different varying amounts of mass and volume depending upon what it looks like. So here, the sulfur crystal, it's about 2 centimeters, has a lot more mass than this sulfur powder here, as you can see. It also has more volume. So extensive is dependent upon the amount of substance, where intensive properties do not change. So here are our different types of signs for chemical changes. So once a chemical change, how we know a chemical change happens is looking at these different possibilities. So there could be a formation of a solid from 2 liquids. This is called precipitation. A turning sour, so the chemical could turn sour when mixed with water. This is acidification. There could be bubbling or fizzing when you add 2 liquids together, so a creation of a gas. There could be heat released or absorbed. So if heat is being released, it is called exothermic. If heat is being absorbed, it is called endothermic. So when you add two compounds together, 2 liquids to a solid and a liquid, if it feels hot, it is exothermic. If it feels cold, that is considered endothermic. So there could be a color change. An example is eggs, which you will see later on. Or an odor is produced where the milk turns sour. So these are all different signs of chemical changes. Basically in the time we have together, we are going to be using different metrics in order to understand different units. So when we're talking about length, we'll generally use the idea of meters. When we're looking at mass, we'll generally use this idea of grams. For volume, we'll use liters, and time, we'll use seconds. So each of these is basically the basic units of measurement that we're going to be using throughout our semester or throughout our time together. So that is the presentation. I will be seeing you guys soon. Feel free to answer those questions for this section.